I'll tell you one thing, the ghosts of Ernie Grunfeld still haunt the Wizards franchise. And what I'm going to try to do here today is to correct one of the biggest sins of his tenure as GM, which was the 2016 offseason. If we recall, that was hyped up as being the big KD to DC year, so we went ahead and gave Scott Brooks a big contract, hoping we could lure KD. And that man didn't even bother to have a sit down with the Wizards, so that completely backfired. So what I'm going to be doing, we're just going to assume that Ernie was rightfully let go after the 2016 season where the Wizards failed to make the playoffs. And we'll bring back a familiar face in Sam Cassell, who was the guy that played a big role in John Wall's development as a point guard. Now, the logic behind this is that you had Steph and Clay out there in the West, and they were in the same category the Wizards were, early playoff exits. They go out and bring in some new blood in Steve Kerr, and that backcourt kicks off. So why not try it with Sam Cassell? He has some experience, he's a guard, he helped develop Wall. Let's get some new blood around some coaching ranks for once instead of going after a retread. And to be fair to Scott, personally, I liked the move when it happened. The first year with him, I felt that Wall and Beal made leaps and bounds in their games. I still do think Scott's a decent developmental coach. However, on the X's and O's side, he leaves a lot to be desired. He was clearly outcoached in that Boston series by Brad Stevens. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move into a topic that's more so not based in hindsight bias. I'll admit my decision to not go with Scott Brooks has a bit of hindsight bias involved. Now we got to skip over the draft because one of Ernie's specialties was trading away draft picks, and the Wizards had no first round pick in the 2016 draft. They traded for Markieff Morris, which you can say it's okay, I guess. He was a solid starter for us. Speaking of draft picks, I'm going to go ahead and bring Porter and Beal back with Porter's team option and extend a qualifying offer for Beal. And we're going to try to get him re-signed long term. That was a no-brainer. And I'm going to just let everybody else walk. That will leave me about $27 million in open cap space. Now, instead of Ernie Grunfeld, I'm not going to blow that $27 million on Ian Mahinmi, Andrew Nicholson, and Jason Smith, who, even at the time, those were just horrible moves. Straight up horrible. It clearly was a panic because Durant didn't go through. Also, they had a meeting with Al Horford, but it fell through at the last minute. He decided to choose the Celtics over the Wizards. Such our luck. So, what I'm going to do instead is, I'm going to go ahead and try to bring Dwight Howard to DC. But we're going to do it a couple of off seasons earlier than when he actually came here. Number one, his contract in general is going to be at least tradable, because in real life I believe he went to the Hawks and they were able to get out of his contract. Give him basically 3 years, $70 million. He'll be a better platoon than Mahinmi for sure. There's no point that Ian Mahinmi was a better option than Dwight Howard. Because the idea behind this team is that the bench was weak, so we're going to try to strengthen the bench. That's why I'm also going to bring in Jeremy Lin, a quality backup point guard to relieve Wall, because when it came to the playoffs, Wall was getting gassed out. He couldn't get any breaks, and that's what cost him in the Boston series. Now, being honest, the 2016 free agent class still haunts a lot of teams. Even to this day, we just had Charlotte that I believe they finally got out of the Batum contract, and the Lakers are still paying Luol Deng for all that money given out. That's not even to mention Evan Turner, Alan Crabb, a bunch of big money given out because of the cap increase. In the Wizards' case, I feel like it hurt them the most because they were a fringer team that definitely could have used that extra cap space. As I go ahead and try to bring in Marvin Williams as a platoon option with Markieff Morris. But yeah, this offseason is what really cost the Wizards, because it pretty much set them up to be in cap hell, to where they basically couldn't make any real moves to improve the team because the Mahinmi contract was such an arbitrage. And it pushed them into making certain rash decisions, such as having to trade off the next year's first just to get some bench help. If you want to know why the Wizards are kind of in the situation that they're in today, you need to look back to this offseason. This, when you're building a team, this time when your stars are young or still not on major contracts, and you still have some cap space to play with a decent young core of Wall, Beal, and Porter, along with Gortat, you need to capitalize on that. Straight up. And you see I'm going ahead and bringing in Lance Stevenson just to give this team some more bench depth, but also flexibility so that, hey, if things don't end up working out for us, we can get out of contracts. So we don't have to commit the Ernie Grunfeld special, where he gives out horrible free agent contracts and then trades off assets to get rid of them, as he did with Andrew Nicholson. And I mean, honestly, this whole offseason was a failure on his part. He had a young core. You had a superstar that grew up in the Wizards' backyard, but your organization was run so incompetently that you couldn't even agree to get him to a sit down. On top of that, you missed out on another free agent that could have filled in Al Horford. And maybe, I don't know, instead of just maybe sitting on that cap space, maybe making some minor moves that might incrementally make the team better but doesn't trap you down, he decides to go all in and give out long-term contracts to career role players. Now you see, Marvin Williams is here, 2-year deal. Same for Jeremy Lin, cheap contract or whatnot. And you know, all these moves that I made were nothing that were too far out of the realm of possibility. It just hurt the fact that Ernie had a toxic reputation in DC and around the league. There's a reason why the only major free agents the Wizards were able to get his whole time was old man Paul Pierce and Gilbert Arenas, who, if you recall, he literally came here on a coin flip. But we're going to go ahead and get started towards the season or whatnot. So, I mean, obviously, the idea of this, we're going to see if we can build a Wizards team that, at the very minimum, can make a conference final or whatnot. And, you know, eventually win a title, again, with this retooling. This is this is just year one. This is going to be a multi-year thing. The way I'm seeing it, you know, you'll have the next, I'll simulate through this season. And you'll have the next offseason coming up where, you know, Porter's coming up for his contract, so I'll have a decision to make on that. You know, maybe I'll go ahead and let Porter walk and let Oubre take over the starting role, which some felt like we should do. Maybe I'll flip Porter at the trade deadline if he isn't panning out for us. So, I mean, there's a bunch of interesting decisions to be made, but I feel like this was the crossroads of destiny for the whole Wizards franchise. So, thank you for checking this video out. Stay tuned to the channel. As far as my Wizards fans, trust me, I have more content planned. As far as that, maybe a video looking into the overall failure that was the Ernie Grunfeld tenure in DC, because man, literally, you could probably tell this is the first season we're going into where we're not still paying for his ineptitude. And I mean, seriously, we just got out of the Mahimi contract finally. I'm not going to really get on him about the Wall contract because that would be hindsight bias. I'm not going to give him hell for the Wall contract. But I mean, man, he got 15 years and his track record was absolutely horrible. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with part 2 of this rebuild. Peace.